Dr. Megan Emerson, assistant director overseeing acquisitions at the museum, glanced down at the crate's contents with obvious disinterest. The new batch of artifacts seemed dull, nothing exciting or noteworthy. Pinching her nose against a faint smell, she carefully extracted each piece, mindful not to damage them. A smaller museum had recently closed, and Megan had worked hard to secure some of its relics, but most felt like leftovers or scraps. Still, these were valuable antiques and deserved care. One item caught her attention, a small statuette wrapped in packing paper. It stood less than a foot tall, carved from a muted grey stone. Megan guessed it was Norse, likely representing a great warrior or deity. She settled on it being a god, maybe Balder or Loki. Worshippers of Loki were rare, so if it was him, this piece might be a unique find. Most likely, though, she thought it was Balder. Megan made a mental note to research it further. Setting the statuette on the table, she reached for the next artifact but missed the faint green glow flickering briefly from its eyes, as if something inside had stirred awake after a long slumber. After hours of cataloguing, Megan checked the time and realized it was late. Her husband Thomas and their children, Emily and Luke, would be worried. She sighed, grabbed her coat, and turned to leave, accidentally knocking the statuette into the duffel bag by the table. Without noticing, she picked up the bag and headed home, relieved the day was done. At home, Megan was glad Thomas was there too. She kissed him and was pleasantly surprised to see dinner already prepared. At the table, Thomas smiled, a stray kernel of corn caught in his neatly trimmed beard, as he recounted his day. Luke, their lively 12-year-old son, kicked his 15-year-old sister Emily under the table. Emily's annoyed protests echoed around the room, and Megan sighed, used to the nightly chaos. After dinner, Emily and Luke cleared the dishes while Megan and Thomas moved to the living room. Megan paused, remembering her bag, and went to empty it. She froze when she spotted the statuette on top. "Oh no," she whispered, knowing taking it home could cause trouble. She resolved to return it to the museum first thing in the morning and set it on the bookshelf as a reminder. Luke dashed to his room, relieved the chores were done. He hated how his sister bossed him around just because she was older. Turning on his TV, he plugged in his video game and quickly forgot his irritation. Later, Megan called him for bedtime. Begrudgingly, Luke turned off the game and got ready. After his mom tucked him in and turned off the light, Luke waited a moment, then switched on his flashlight. Reaching under his bed, he pulled out a magazine. He smiled as he flipped it open, fascinated by the pictures inside. He didn't fully understand why older boys were so interested, but he found the images captivating, beautiful, even. The thrill of sneaking a look made him grin. "Man," he whispered, "I wish I could meet someone like that." Nearby, the statuette's eyes glowed faintly green, its lips curving into what looked like a subtle smile. The next morning, Megan woke the kids for school. Emily got up without issue. In Luke's room, she found him curled under his blankets. Smiling, she yanked the covers away and said, "Rise and shine, sleepyhead." But instead of Luke, a young woman lay in his bed about 19 years old, with reddish blonde hair and an athletic build. She was clearly surprised to see Megan. "What's going on?" Megan gasped. The girl looked confused, then startled when she noticed her surroundings. "I don't know how this happened," Megan told Thomas, who stared at their son in disbelief. Emily couldn't help but smirk at the strange turn of events. Luke, now in their mother's robe, looked awkward and tried to cover himself. Megan quickly stopped him. "Enough," she said firmly. There was no way Luke could go to school like this, and neither Megan nor Thomas felt ready to leave for work until they understood what was happening. Emily had already missed the bus, so they decided she would stay home. Nervously, Luke confessed about the magazine he'd hidden under his bed, unsure if it had anything to do with his sudden change but worried to leave it unmentioned. His parents took it surprisingly well, focusing instead on their bigger concerns. After a tense silence, Luke finally said, "I need to use the bathroom." Megan sighed and said, "I'll handle this," leading Luke to the bathroom and reminding him to sit. After he was done, She showed him how to clean himself, both of them blushing at the awkwardness. Noticing Luke's growing curiosity about his new body, Megan decided to distract him by dressing him in some of her clothes. She didn't have a bra his size, so she hurried next door and told the neighbor that her niece had run away without any clothes. The story worked, and she borrowed a bra. Megan made sure Luke was properly covered, though he clearly hated being dressed as a girl less than he hated being in this new form. That only made him more curious. "There he is," Megan announced as Luke entered, cheeks flushed with embarrassment. He felt uneasy seeing his family like this. He noticed he was a bit taller, only by a few inches. The strangest thing wasn't the absence of what he used to have, but the weight on his chest. His chest stuck out so far he felt like he might topple forward or bump into things. Emily stared at Luke, mouth agape. "I can't believe my little brother has bigger chests than Emmy," she exclaimed, which made Luke feel a little better since he was still managing to annoy his sister without doing a thing. Grinning, Luke cupped his chest. "Yeah, they're definitely bigger," he teased, enjoying the frustrated glare on Emily's face. "That's not fair," Emily complained, retreating to her room, which lifted Luke's spirits a bit. "Cut it out, Luke," Thomas scolded, while Megan shot him a sharp look. Luke felt a pang of guilt but quickly shrugged it off, she deserved it. He glanced down at his chest again, curious to explore more, but his mom wasn't giving him a moment alone, leaving him frustrated. Emily sat on her bed, burying her face in her hands. It wasn't fair. Her brother had been transformed like this, and she couldn't even get a date with Tommy from school. She pressed her hands to her chest, feeling how much smaller she was compared to Luke. She was average for her age and still growing, but envy gnawed at her. "I wish I were bigger," she whispered. In the next room, unnoticed, the statuette's eyes flickered green once before dimming. Suddenly, Emily felt strange. Her bra tightened uncomfortably. A smile spread across her face. Somehow, she was changing too. The bra grew tighter and tighter until she tore off her shirt and bra, eager to watch the transformation. She wanted to show Luke who was bigger now. Hands on her chest, she felt it swell, then noticed her pants growing snug. Curious, she pulled them off and felt herself expanding. But then panic set in, something was wrong. Looking down, she saw her waist and legs enlarging. She was gaining weight fast. "No," she cried, realizing she'd grown too big for any of her clothes. Disgusted, she stared at the flabby skin on her arm and started crying again as her body kept growing. Thomas and Megan heard her scream and rushed in, stopping in shock. Their daughter sat on the bed, which barely supported her weight. She was enormous, easily between 400 and 500 pounds. Her chest was huge, all soft and heavy, and fat spilled everywhere. "Oh my God," Megan whispered, stunned. First Luke, now Emily. She couldn't believe it. And whatever this was, it was spreading. Suddenly, she realized with horror that she and Thomas might be next if they didn't figure it out fast. Thomas suggested they leave the house, go to a hotel or a friend's place, thinking the cause might be nearby. Megan pointed out they'd never managed to get Emily into the car and refused to leave her behind. Reluctantly, they dismissed that plan. Megan tried to soothe the sobbing Emily while Thomas searched for answers. Luke looked at his sister in disbelief. That couldn't be Emily. Seeing her engulfed in that mass of flesh, he felt sorry for all the times he'd been mean. He ran to his room and cried into his pillow, ashamed and feeling responsible. Lying there, Luke ignored the pressure of his new chest. After a while, he wiped his tears and forced himself to sit up. Accidentally scratching himself, he held up his hand and stared at the nail that had caused the scratch. This wasn't right. He longed to be himself again and wanted Emily to be normal too. At last, he placed most of his hope in his father, convinced that Dad would fix everything. That's just what dads did. Thomas paced the living room, anxiety weighing heavily on him. Normally calm and logical, this situation was unlike anything he'd ever faced. Still, he forced himself to stay composed, knowing panic wouldn't help his children. But it took all his willpower not to burst out the front door yelling. He heard Megan in Emily's room, trying to soothe her. Thomas felt terrible for what had happened to their daughter. He wanted to call the hospital but knew they couldn't explain or treat whatever this was. He wondered, was it some secret government experiment gone wrong? Aliens? Something even stranger? He had no answers. While pacing, something on the bookshelf caught his eye. His heart froze when he saw the small grey stone idol. Nervously, he stepped back and called, "Honey, come here." Megan appeared, eyes red from crying. Thomas pointed at the idol. "Oh my God," she whispered, remembering it was the moment she'd brought that thing home that everything began. Thomas reached to pick it up, but Megan stopped him. They needed to get away from it. "Come on, Luke," Megan said urgently, "we're leaving." Thomas struggled to lift Emily with Megan's help. His back ached as he grunted, wishing he were younger. Suddenly, Thomas tripped over his pant legs and fell. Horrified, he watched as everything around him began to grow. Megan and Emily looked down at him in surprise. Finally, Thomas stopped shrinking, now buried in his oversized clothes, unable to remove them. He cried out for help, but all that came back was the cry of a baby. Emily collapsed back onto her bed, which groaned under her immense weight. She stared at the infant on the floor as Megan gently lifted him, trying to soothe the crying baby. The child, her husband, quivered against her shoulder. Megan held the tiny figure, shocked. She desperately wanted to leave but felt trapped by Emily's condition and the mysterious statue. She reasoned that since nothing had happened to her while carrying the idol or at the museum, it must be safe to handle. But what was causing all this? She asked Emily what she remembered before the change. "I don't know," Emily sobbed. Megan comforted her and encouraged her to recall. Eventually, Emily explained she'd been crying, jealous of Luke, when the transformation began. Just then, Luke entered, asking, "Where's Dad?" He froze at the sight of the baby, realizing the answer. Megan thought back to Luke's secret magazine and felt a chill. If she was right, they had something like a cursed artifact, a monkey's paw, in the house. Very bad news. She hoped the traditional limit of 3 wishes didn't apply, since they already seemed to have used them. She prayed she could find a way to reverse everything without making things worse. If she could even use it to wish at all. She wasn't certain. "Damn," she muttered, "that thing has got to be Loki." With tears in her eyes, Megan slowly approached the idol. Emily's whispered plea echoed in her mind, "Please, Mom, change me back." She shivered, determined to set things right if it was possible. She knew the others hadn't touched the idol during their changes but hoped that by doing so, she might control the wish. She briefly wondered if the effect only applied to the wisher but rejected the idea Thomas wouldn't have changed into a baby otherwise. She noticed she hadn't heard any words from Thomas before he transformed. Maybe, she thought, it doesn't need to be spoken. Still, she wasn't sure. But she had to try. Carefully picking up the idol, she faced Luke, who watched her with hopeful eyes. Taking a deep breath, she began, "I wish Emily would return to her normal self, the way she was before all this started." From Emily's room came a joyful cry. Emily burst out, looking just like herself, excitement shining through despite her state of undress. Megan hugged her tightly as tears of happiness fell. Luke looked at her expectantly. "Be patient," she told him. She glanced down at the baby still in her arms and gently placed him a few feet away. Riding the wave of success, she made her second wish, hoping it wasn't limited to one per person. "I wish Thomas were older." Almost immediately, she realized her mistake, she hadn't been specific. A bad feeling settled in. She knew monkey's paw wishes always came with a catch. The tiny baby in front of her began to grow. Megan watched nervously, hoping the wish was working. The baby aged, but then stopped, frozen at about 5 years old. Thomas looked up, confused. "Why stop me here?" he asked, his voice that of a little boy. Megan shrugged. "At least it's not worse. Maybe I can finish the rest of the way." Thomas nodded, eager for her to continue. She glanced back at the idol. 2 wishes left, one for Thomas, one for Luke. For a moment, she considered using a wish for money or something else, but if this truly was Loki's statue, mischief would follow any wish. Like a cursed monkey's paw, the less they used it, the better. Bracing herself, she prepared for the next wish. Luke giggled, comparing it to Aladdin's lamp. He looked at his dad, his sister, then at Megan, still unchanged. Smirking, he said, "I wish Mom was 12 years old," then burst out laughing at the horrified expression that spread across her face as she began to shrink. Amused, Luke watched his mother grow younger right before his eyes, shrinking down to his age, or at least the age he was supposed to be. He grinned, knowing they could fix it soon, but couldn't resist enjoying the moment. Megan stared, stunned. Her clothes loosened while the room seemed to expand around her. Even Emily and Luke appeared taller. She stepped back, tripped over her own pant legs, and fell. The idol slipped from her hands, crashing to the floor with a sharp crack. All eyes fixed on the broken idol. 3 pairs of shocked, horrified, and angry eyes turned toward Luke, now the tallest among them. Guilt washed over him. He hadn't meant to ruin everything, he just wanted Mom to change too, to see what it was like. Megan tried to make a wish with the broken idol, but nothing happened. Still stunned, they found super glue in the kitchen and pieced it back together. It still didn't work. Holding the idol, Megan watched its eyes flash red for a moment, then the entire statue crumbled into dust, slipping through her fingers and disappearing forever. Tears streaming, she buried her face in her hands. Thomas wrapped his arms around her, needing comfort as much as giving it. Neither wanted to face the thought of growing up or going through puberty all over again. Emily shivered, grateful she'd changed back before the idol broke, but feeling sorry for her family. They didn't know what to do next. How could they prove who they really were? Only Emily remained unchanged. Thomas tried to reassure Megan they'd find a way. Luke sat in shock, realizing his prank had trapped him forever in a girl's body. He looked at his parents, so small, so helpless, especially his dad, and vowed never to make such a mistake again. He couldn't afford another. Megan wiped her tears and looked at Luke. She realized they would be relying on him and Emily more than ever. Luke was the only one who still looked like an adult and would be needed for what came next. She smiled sadly, knowing he'd need guidance now more than ever. She'd have to teach him what it meant to be a woman. All the lessons girls learned growing up: clothes, manners, how to handle relationships, and yes, the birds and the bees. She nearly laughed at the thought of him getting his first period. That might be some fitting payback for his thoughtlessness. Slowly, they began to plan for the future, hoping they'd find a way forward. If you appreciated this story and wish to show your support, don't forget to join me on Patreon for exclusive content.